better. It's more than just a word.
It's a promise to give our best, develop better technology, create better care, invest in better access.
When you help our veterans get better, it means constantly pursuing your best.
There are thousands of us giving our best every day to heal millions of veterans. Because this is more than a career. This is your life's work.
Hello, today is Talk About It Tuesday. I'm your host, Kendra Wilson Hudson, for the Veterans Affairs Health Administration. First off, I want to thank you for joining us. We know that your time is valuable, and we appreciate that you're spending a part of your day with us. Since it's Tuesday, the second Tuesday of every month, we take questions from you all. And we have a select group of questions that I'm going to go through and hopefully try to ease your mind about some of the things you have, the questions that you may have with human resources and with the application process. If you happen to be joining us for the first time, these questions are selected from the audience members like you who have submitted across our social media platforms this week. But before we begin, I want to remind you that we want you to be a part of the conversation. So if you have any questions, make sure you put them in the chat. And our team will do our best to get the answers for you and address your comments. With that being said, it's Tuesday. Let's talk about it. I have Lori from Dallas. She asked the question. She said, how do I become a part of your recruiting and selection team, as I have experience in career services, writing resumes, doing cover letters, and critiques? Well, Lori, thank you for your question. What I would like for you to understand is that we have the USA Jobs, where people like you can go on to USA Jobs and see what positions are available. Human resources is a great field to get in. The reason I like human resources is because I enjoy the interaction that I have with people. I enjoy trying to help people get into positions and into careers where they're comfortable and where they can actually help our veterans. You too have that opportunity by going on to USA Jobs and actually applying there for human resources positions. The positions can range from an HR assistant to HR specialist in various areas of human resources. So if you're an HR staffer or you like to do recruitment, we have HR recruitment and staffing. Also, we have employee and labor relations. That's another area of human resources. The other area that we may have that may interest you is benefits and compensation. So HR has a plethora of career paths, and your way to that career path is going on to USA Jobs and finding what job and opportunity fits you. I hope that answered your question, Lori. Now, I also want to tell you about a new program that HR has. It's called the STAR program. It's a trainee program that's for, trainee program for human resources. It's specialized training and advanced readiness. In this program, if you're apply and you are selected for the program, you will come in at a GS-9 trainee. You would work as a trainee for 2 years. And once that 2 years of trainee is completed, then you could possibly go into an HR position up to a GS-12. I think this is a great program for many of you who are trying to get your foot in the door to HR. In our chat, we have the link where the job is posted on USA Jobs. So if you're interested in getting into HR, then check out the HR Star trainee program. Our next question is from Jessie. Jessie asks, she says, I would love to know when applying for an advanced AMSA job, how can I request to stay in the cardiac monitoring treatment specialty? I'm currently a pacemaker tech and Zoe Life PSR. Well, Jesse, thank you for your question. What I can say is that when you apply to VA positions, although you may have specialized experience in one area, you have to read the vacancy announcement to see what area they're specifically recruiting for. Please excuse me. You have to look at the area to see what they are actually recruiting for. If they are recruiting for AMSA in the cardiac field, then sure, you can apply there for that specific field. But you cannot apply to any AMSA job and then say, well, you know what? I want to work in cardiac. It depends on what the specific job that's announced is looking for, what we're trying to fill at that time. So I hope that you will continue to apply to USA jobs to try to find that AMSA position that fits you. Thank you for your question. I have a question from, or basically this is a statement from Lazarus. And it says, the application process is difficult. I'm returning to the workforce after selling my family business. I'm trying to start a career in public affairs with the VA. My educational background is in public affairs, but my resume only shows my experience in my family business. I owned and operated it for over 20 years. Any suggestions on how to get my resume noticed? I'd appreciate it. Well, Lazarus, I hope that I can help you with this question. One of the things that I always tell people is that although you've worked in a certain area or a certain field for 20 years, some of that experience that you had while working in your family business had to relate to public relations. I'm sure at some point that you had to advertise. When you think about advertisement, that's a part of public relations, the marketing, the media piece. Also, when you're talking about public relations and you're talking about your family business, when you're dealing with your customers, you're relating to those customers. You're talking about what it is that you do in that business. We have to be creative and open up our minds to think about what it is that we do in our present positions that could relate or correlate to the position that we're looking for. Also, you can volunteer at various places where they may need someone in public relations. Experience is everywhere. And all experience counts, whether it's paid experience or it's volunteer. I hope that helps to answer your question. I want everyone to know that we appreciate the comments that you're sending in. So if you have anything, please go ahead, put it in the chat. We want to get to you and try to get some of your questions answered today as well. I have Lawrence Robinson who has sent in a question, and he says, explain what it means when someone applies for a job and their resume is sent to the hiring manager or hiring individual, but they don't get an interview. Why is that? If that person's resume is good enough to make it past the automated system and into the hands of someone who is responsible for hiring, why wouldn't they get an interview? Thank you for that question, Lawrence. And the reason that I say thank you is because a lot of people have that question. A lot of people get past the automated system and they get their resume to the selecting official, but that's not the end of the process. We in HR encourage all selecting officials to have a matrix or have their selecting grid as to the questions that they want to ask prior to actually doing the interview. When they take that matrix or that grid that they have and they match what you have on your resume to that grid, the questions that they have on the grid, they can then see who their top 5 or the top 10 may be and do interviews for those personnel. So although you may make it through the automated system, there's a step in between where the hiring official or the hiring individuals may do a panel and review the actual application, write out a matrix to try to get to the top 10 or the top 15, top 5, so that then they can interview for that position and select the best candidate for that position based on what they reviewed in their matrix. Now that may not be the be all end all answer, but that is what we encourage our selecting officials and our hiring managers to do. I hope that answers your question and also gives you some insight on what happens on the back end. Once they actually complete that and they do their interviews, the process then comes back to human resources once they make a selection. And at that point, hopefully you'll receive an email, an automated email, letting you know whether you were selected for the job or if you were not. But if you were not selected for the job, don't give up. Keep applying. Thank you, Lazarus. I'm sorry, that was Lawrence. I have a question from Elma. She says, will we get contacted before the job closes, or do we have to wait till the job closes? Well, that question depends on how the job is announced. If the job has an end date to it, meaning that it's open from this date, open for 2 weeks, let's say. If it's open for 2 weeks, then you will be notified of something after the 2 weeks have expired. The reason I say that is because there are some jobs that are open continuously, and they're open maybe for a year. But what Human Resources does is they'll go in every 2 to 3 weeks and review the candidates that have come in, and they would forward the candidates who qualify to the selecting official, but that job is still opened. Therefore, you may be notified prior to the closing date if it's an open continuous job. But if it's only open for 2 weeks or 3 weeks, they normally notify you of something after that position closes. So Elma, thank you for your question, and I hope that answers the question that you may have had. It appears we have a lot of questions here today, and a lot of these questions are pretty broad, but a lot of them are requiring a lot of detail. I can give you a general answer, but the best thing that I would say is when you have these detailed questions, when you apply for a job, at the very bottom of the announcement, it has a point of contact. Always remember to put that information away somewhere in case you have a question concerning the job to which you applied for. You can send an email to that point of contact and probably get a more detailed answer than what I'm giving. I also hope that that helps you. How beneficial is it to have 10-point veteran preference in the hiring process? This question came in from Tristan LaBelle. Thank you, Tristan, for your question. We appreciate our veterans and we appreciate our veteran service. So when it comes to veterans preference, yes, we do look at veterans preference in the hiring process. We have 5-point veterans, we have 10-point compensable veterans. But the thing is, when you apply to the job, you have to submit the paperwork to verify that you are a preference eligible veteran. Now, just because you're a preference eligible veteran, that does not mean you're going to automatically get the job, because there are other preference eligible veterans who are applying as well. It does help a veteran when the process is going through and we're looking at the veteran's preference. Veteran preference does push you up if you are qualified for the job to begin with. If there's a civilian who has applied and a 10-point veteran who has applied, and they are equally matched on paper or equally matched in an interview, that 10-point veteran's preference would give the veteran the boost. It's the law. Veteran's preference always helps a veteran when they're applying for a job. So thank you, Tristan, for that question. I know that a lot of people have had questions concerning fast tracking the VA process. We have a question here from Mark Juarez, who says, what efforts are being made in the U.S. Department of Veterans Affairs to improve the HR process for onboarding? My onboarding took a long time, and most employees can't wait long for these positions, especially as a licensed medical provider. Please tell us what the U.S. Department of Veterans Affairs is doing to improve this process. Well, I can remember this. I remember when I first applied for a job with VA. When I applied with a job for VA many years ago, the process I felt just took entirely too long. I didn't understand why. But let me try to explain to you. The VA is working very hard to cut down the process and the time that it takes to onboard a person after we notify you that you're selected for a job. We hear you. We understand the pains of the onboarding process. And because we do understand that, we are trying to work to cut down the process, to try to streamline the process. Yes, we've streamlined it over the years, and we've streamlined, taken out a lot of the processes to try to help move things along faster. We're still working on that process. It's not something that's going to happen overnight, but know that VA is thinking of you. We hear the complaints, we hear the angst, and we're working to improve the process. We're trying to work to get people in much faster. There are some people who say, well, it's taking me 6 months, 7 months. I had to turn down the job because someone else called me. Well, we're working hard because we want you in VA. We want you to help us take care of our veteran population. So we're working very hard to speed up this process. The Secretary of VA has said that he wants it to move. So guess what? We're working underneath that umbrella to move the process along. We hope that in the very near future, we can cut down the process and move to a better fast tracking program to get you guys in taking care of our veterans much faster. I hope that helps, Mark. Just know that we are working and we are trying to get that process streamlined and moving faster. We have a question from Janet. I'm not going to pronounce your last name. I'm not going to do it. No. So Janet, thank you for your question. The question is, I've gone all the way through the background check and fingerprint process. Now everything has been at a standstill. I'm not sure why or what to do. Do you have any insight? Well, the fingerprint and background check is a part of that process that we're moving to fast track. What I would say is that the person that contacted you from Human Resources to offer you the job, just contact them and ask them if they can give you any insight as to how long it's going to take. Send them an email, make the phone call, just reach out. Let them know that you're still interested in the job and you just want to know how long is this going to take, because you're ready to come in and work with the VA. Hopefully you can get an answer and it won't be much longer. We're looking forward to having you on our team, Janet. And Sandra has asked, how long does it take typically take to be called for an interview? Well, that can vary as well. I will say that the questions that you guys have sent me this week have been very, very detailed and specific to you. I want to try to answer your questions as best I can, but the best thing that I can tell you is to contact that point of contact who was on the job which you applied to. Now, how long does it typically take? It can take anywhere from 3 days once it hits the selecting official's desk to 2 weeks. It depends on what they have to put together as far as their interview panel, as far as scheduling to get people to actually do the interviews. Because most times in VA, we like to do performance-based interviews and we like to do interview panels. So it may be more than one person interviewing you. So therefore, we have to be cognizant of the time of the people that we get to be on the interview panel. So sometimes it may take anywhere from 3 days to 2 weeks, sometimes longer, depending on schedules. But although it may take time, stay interested in VA. We want to connect with you. We want you to come and work with us. So don't lose hope. We're still here. We're still looking for people just like you. Okay? Thank you for your question, Sandra. So this question says, what happens after applications have been processed and forwarded to the hiring manager? Well, that's what we were just talking about. We talked about the hiring process, or we talked about the interview process. It depends on the actual manager and how long it takes them to get through the interview process. Once they've done their interview process, they made selections, they send that back to Human Resources. Human Resources will then go ahead and make the call and offer the job. Once they offer you the job, that process then moves to the onboarding process, where you'll have to maybe come in, do a physical. You may have to do drug screening. You may have to do your fingerprints there's 4 or 5 different processes that you have to complete before we can actually make a final offer. That final thing is the background check before they call you and say, hey, I think we have a date. Then they'll see if you're available to come in on that date. I hope that answers your question. I see that Derek Davis has actually sent in a question in the chat. And I thank you for your question. It says, are there any SkillBridge opportunities coming to the VA? Yes, we are actually working right now with various positions for SkillBridge. I know specifically that right now we're trying to fill some of our police opportunities with SkillBridge. I know that we're hiring some nurses with SkillBridge. So VA and SkillBridge opportunities, we're working together collaboratively to bring in people to work in the VA using the SkillBridge Avenue opportunity. I have a question that says here, is it okay to inquire about a submitted application? For example, I submitted an application back in March, and my current status is referred to hiring manager and eligible for the GS level I applied for. Should I call to ask about the status? That question came in from John Lee. John, I would say that it's okay to call, but what I would do is follow up my call with an email. I like to have it in writing so I can say that, hey, I did call you on such and such day, and I emailed you, and I just want to know, what is the process? It still says that I'm sitting here, I'm referred to the hiring manager, but no one has contacted me. Can you tell me what I need to do from this point? So yes, it's always appropriate to ask where you stand in the hiring process. Okay. I see a question from Tasha Andrews. Thank you for your question, Tasha. The question is, once you've interviewed, how long will it take for someone from HR to tell you the outcome? Will an email be sent, or does someone reach out to you? Well, Tasha, if you've been selected for the position, you will receive a phone call to notify you that you've been selected. If you were not selected for the position, you should receive an email to let you know that someone else has been selected for the position. And from that point, you'll know that you need to continue to look for look for opportunities in USA Jobs and continue to apply. Whenever you're not selected for a job, don't get discouraged. VA has job openings throughout the nation. So just because you're turned down for 1, 2, or 20, don't get discouraged. Keep applying. And I say that because when I first applied to VA, true story, when I first applied to VA, I must have submitted, believe it or not, 80 applications before I got the first bite. 80 applications before I got the first bite. That was right after I got out of the military. So imagine me, after I've retired from the Marine Corps, I'm applying to a job in the VA, and I did not get a call until application number 81. But when I got that call, I knew right then and there that I was gonna kill that interview. I wanted that job. I wanted to work in VA. I wanted to be a part of the veteran community, continuing to work and do what I love, which is human resources. I was given the opportunity to interview, and the selecting official said, you know what? You may get bored in this job. I just think that you have a lot of experience and you may get bored in this job. I said, I don't think that way. I think that every opportunity to work with a veteran, to work in VA, should not be based upon what you think as far as my experience, but about the experience that I can bring to you. She said, well, maybe this job that I'm offering you may be below your skill set. I said, as long as I'm in a job where I'm able to help and affect a veteran, I'll take it. And guess what? I came in the VA as a GS5 HR assistant in employee relations. Throughout my career, I've worked in various aspects of human resources. I started out in employee relations. I went on to be a HR assistant in staffing. I left HR for a little while. I even worked in the front office with management, with the executive team as an administrative assistant, but I missed being in HR. So what did I do? I went back to HR. I worked my way through the HR process. I've worked benefits. I've worked with staffing. I've worked with employee relations. I moved over to a supervisory position, supervising the staffing specialist. From there, I went to be the deputy director of human resources. And now I'm working on a national level as a consultant and recruiter. I love what I do in VA. I love being able to help people. I love being able to touch and affect lives. I even enjoy being able to reach out to you guys and help you to understand the HR hiring process better, or to help you understand what it means to be a VA employee. Being a VA employee is something that I love, something that I always cherish. And I hope that once you become a member of VA, that you'll cherish the opportunities that we have here at VA as well. Well, with that said, I think we're going to wrap up for today. We hope that this information has helped you in some way. And for those of you who have submitted questions in the chat, thank you for taking the time to reach out to us and helping us to make this broadcast special. We appreciate your interest. If you submitted a question that we didn't get to this week, don't be alarmed. We'll work as a team to try to get to you and answer the questions that you have on our future broadcast. Or maybe we'll reach out and get your answers answered today in our comment section. Thank you again for tuning in to Talk About It Tuesday. We'll see you next week.